mayday, relay, mayday, relay, mayday, relay, all ships, night and radio. Pacific Glory on fire, 150 degrees, 8.4 miles from St. Catherine's Point West. 12 men still missing. Search continuing. Boxer and others now alongside and fighting fire.
This is all that's left the Pacific Glory, a tanker carrying 70,000 tons of crude oil, which became a blazing inferno during the night after a collision off St. Catherine's Point on the Isle of Wight with another tanker. 12 of her crew have died, but 29 have survived after a mammoth and dramatic rescue operation throughout the night and early today. In Southern News Extra tonight, we're bringing you reports from our own launch Southerner, from the firefighting tug, from the air, and also from the mainland.
It was at 8:39 last night that disaster struck 6 miles south of St. Catherine's Point. The Allegro, 46,000 tons, bound from Tripoli to Forlì, sliced into the starboard quarter of the 42,000-ton Pacific Glory, inward bound for Rotterdam from West Africa. On board the Pacific Glory were 42 men and a Dutch pilot. At first it looked as if there was no immediate danger. But just after 9 o'clock, fire broke out in the engine room. At 9:35, the motor vessel Luna Fisher radioed that she'd spotted a blazing ship south of the Isle of Wight. At 9:56, the German freighter Nordwelle reported that she was approaching a lifeboat half a mile from the tanker and picking up swimming survivors. Another German ship, the Concordia, picked up 23 crew members, most of them Chinese. They were in pitiful condition. They were suffering from extreme shock. 2 had broken legs, and almost all had swallowed crude oil, which was pouring from a ruptured cargo tank. 1 man was already dead. 12 were missing. Meanwhile, ashore, Operation Solfire, the fire service's contingency plan, swung into operation. Firemen from Portsmouth and Hampshire embarked on tugs for the 3-hour haul to the Pacific Glory. From Portland, HMS Zulu headed for the scene. So too did the Admiralty tugs Samson and Boxer. Michael Gray was on board Southerner.
And the fire has just started breaking out again, despite the fact that 3 fire tugs have been here for nearly 9 hours now, pumping thousands upon thousands of gallons of foam in, and sent out a request for more supplies to be sent in. The fire is still not under control. We can see from here, I don't know whether you can see it, but it is absolutely red hot inside that ship. Just about all the crew's cabin quarters look as if they're going up any minute, and in fact the flames are coming through now. And there is a gaping hole right in the middle of the ship. The flames are coming through, the smoke is absolutely thick and black, and it looks as if this fire in fact is going to continue for many, many more hours. And in fact that looks like the Hampshire Fire Service's tug, the Atherfield, which in fact we have Mike Edwards, one of our cameramen, on board.
Well, we approached from the windward side initially, and there were already 2 or 3 tugs around it, and some firemen are actually on the deck of the tanker, which took me aback a bit, because that seemed to me on the face of it to be pretty dangerous. And our tug, which was obviously a very large, powerful tug from Forlì, opened up with all her fire foam hoses and put such a blizzard of foam onto the tanker that after a few minutes the firemen who were on the deck of the tanker had to run back for cover from our blizzard. That was the initial start of it, and then we had to get round to the rent in the side of the tanker, which happened to be down to the lee, and we came round the after stern, which was beginning to be burnt out pretty well, and through the big pall of black smoke, and pumped our foam as best we could into the rent, which was very difficult. They managed to semi-smother it for a short period, and then it would belch out again. Well, I was amazed at the fact that the firemen could stand this intense pressure of work and the lack of fresh air for such long periods, because I didn't have to be there, and I managed to find the odd pockets of reasonably clear air.
As dawn broke, the full extent of the damage could be seen. As firemen poured foam onto the ship, the tugs headed towards the shoal waters south of the Nab Tower. And ashore at Haslar, a hovercraft landed the first of Pacific Glory's survivors. Peter Whiteman was there.
So we managed to get in the lifeboat. Luckily they were ready and swam outside. So we jumped in the lifeboat. I let them stop them halfway on the lower deck to get some more crew members. When I didn't see any more, I said lower away, you know, to in the water. And then one more showed up, we dived overboard and we picked them up. And then we had to cast off as soon as possible because the burning oil was coming around, you see.
How bad was the fire after the first explosion?
After the first explosion, let me see, let me get together. Well, the whole house went afire, more or less.
The wheelhouse?
No, the whole Brit's house. Oh, that is about maybe 6 floors, you know, for the 6.
Yes.
Something like that, I don't know exactly. And after that, we were still maybe about 20 yards alongside, and then I suppose it was the pump room who blew up. And then after that, another explosion happened. But I managed with shouting and shouting, that's a row. My throat is sore from shouting, you know, giving orders to get away from burning oil, otherwise you still burn it.
It was now 12 hours since the collision. Scores of firemen had been blasting the ship with foam for half that time. As relief fire crews took over, weary firemen returned to Portsmouth. And Assistant Divisional Fire Officer Jack Brown of Portsmouth City Force told me what had happened.
There was oil on the water which was burning, and a visible gash in the side of the hull just forward of the superstructure, which had ruptured one of the large fuel-carrying tanks, the cargo-carrying tanks, and this was on fire and burning violently.
Even so, you still went alongside and actually got a firefighting crew on board the ship.
Yes, well, there were 2 objects in this. We knew at that time that there were still 12 men missing. You probably know that one of the main jobs of the fire service is life-saving, and we decided that we would initially get alongside and get an investigation crew aboard to see, have a look at the job at closer terms. We were able, I went on board with 2 other of the crew, and we were able to leap on board and get over the rail, and we started to search the ship, A, to look for survivors, and B, to see what we could do in the way of dealing with the fire.
Did you find any of the crew members?
At a later stage, a much later stage, we found 4 of the crew members who unfortunately were dead.
11 o'clock, 15 hours since disaster struck the Pacific Glory. And from the air, it looks to be no doubt at all that the ship is going to go down. As we watch, the waters breaking over the stern, which is still ablaze, have been inching forward. And they're now breaking ahead of the bridge. When she was abandoned, it's almost certain that doors and hatchways were left open. So it seems a matter of certainty that the water will cascade down, fill the engine room, and then she'll gradually tip up. The bow seems to be rising. Certainly the wires from the 3 tugs are as taut as bowstrings. Still they pull her. Still she's tugging, inching her way painfully towards the Nab Shoal off the eastern edge of the Isle of Wight. The decks of this ship are red hot. You can see them down by the funnel, and they're glowing red. You can't help but admire the courage of the men in the 9 tugs, and most of all, the lifeboat, which is only about 100 yards away from the ship. The tremendous courage of those men who are trying to control the fire, trying to prevent an even worse disaster from happening. Because if that fire spreads to the oil in those tanks, the bang is going to be heard ashore in Southampton, 20 miles away.
Meanwhile, the other tanker involved in the collision, the Allegro, had limped into Forley and safely alongside.
The firefighting operations today have been led by Station Officer George Clark from Portsmouth. Mr. Clark, what sort of hazards have you been facing?
Well, we've been facing quite a serious fire in the after section of the ship. I suppose our first hazard was the removal of the 4 casualties, which we found on the after section of the ship. And because the vessel was, liable to sink this morning, in fact she did start to go under to quite a degree, my crews were deployed to recover these bodies so that we didn't lose them.
Was there any danger from explosions at all?
Yes, there was some danger from explosion. We had to board the vessel and tackle the fire in close proximity, get into the superstructure to tackle the fire. We shortly had to withdraw because the vessel was in danger of sinking. We needed to get her into shallower water, so we withdrew, towed her into shallower water, where once again we made a further attack on board the vessel itself.
Despite the desperate efforts of 5 tugs to get this crippled tanker into deeper water, the Pacific Glory has, to all intents and purposes, sunk. But it's only in 38 feet of water. Residents of Shanklin and Sandown over there on the Isle of Wight, about 3 or 4 miles away from us, can see quite clearly this thick pall of black smoke rising above us. And all around us we can see lumps of tar from where the oil has been burning on the sea, and indeed masses of evidence of the 70,000 gallons of crude oil which has been spilling out of this tanker. In many ways it may be reminiscent of the Torrey Canyon or indeed the Sitakund disaster when the ship was beached off Eastbourne. And that perhaps is going to be the story, that this crippled tanker is going to be here for some time as a reminder of one of the worst shipping disasters on the south coast for many, many years.
Glory on fire, 175 degrees, 8 miles from St. Catherine's Point. 29 survivors rescued, 12 men still missing. Vessel searching. Tug Boxer with Fire Brigade on board in position. 240135 to the warship, night ready.